He had smiled for the cameras, posed for fans, and signed autographs with a confidence that made everyone believe he was fine. But Can Yaman had become a master of masks, and that night, when the lights faded and the noise was gone, there was nothing left but silence, and the unbearable weight of loneliness. That hotel room in Paris wasn't unfamiliar. He had stayed there before, years ago, but this time everything felt colder. The city that once inspired romance now felt like a distant, mocking echo of memories he could no longer touch. He walked into the room and let the heavy door close behind him, the click of the lock sounding like a final verdict. Can dropped his leather jacket on the chair, unbuttoned the top of his shirt, and stared at the city lights from the floor-to-ceiling window. Thousands of people were out there, living, laughing, loving, while he stood alone, caught in a moment he had avoided for far too long. The room was still. His phone buzzed once on the table, a notification, probably from Instagram, but he didn't move. He didn't want to see her face. Not tonight. Not when everything inside him was about to break. He had seen her. Earlier that day, in a quiet Parisian cafe. Demet. She wasn't alone. She was smiling. Not the kind of smile she reserved for press or fans. No, this one was different. Real. Free. The kind of smile that once belonged to him. He had watched from across the street, hidden behind dark sunglasses and a heart that didn't know how to beat properly anymore. Her laughter drifted through the air like a memory, soft and dangerous. The man with her reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and she didn't pull away. That was the moment he knew. She had moved on. Can sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at his hands as if they held the answers. But all they held was silence. Trembling slightly, he took his phone and opened the gallery. Not the public ones, not the polished smiles for the world to see, but the private folder. The one nobody knew about. There she was. Demet, with no makeup, wearing his oversized sweatshirt, curled up on the couch of his Istanbul apartment. Her eyes closed. Her hand resting on his chest. Safe. Home. Ken swallowed hard. He pressed play on a short video clip. Her voice filled the room, soft, sleepy, teasing. Don't work tonight. Just be here, with me. He remembered that night. She had fallen asleep before he could even answer. And now, she wasn't his to hold anymore. He stood up suddenly. The pressure in his chest had reached a boiling point. He walked to the minibar, opened it, then shut it again without taking anything. He didn't want to numb the pain. He wanted to feel it. He took a deep breath and sat back down. The silence was too loud. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, fingers in his hair. And then, without warning, it happened. The tears came. Not the kind that sting and disappear, but the deep, choking sobs that shake your entire body. He covered his face with his hands, trying to muffle the sound, but it was useless. The weight of the moment, the truth, the regret, the memories, all of it crashed down like a storm he couldn't outrun anymore. He cried for the things he never said. He cried for the promises he broke. He cried for the woman who once looked at him like he was her entire world, and who now smiled that same smile for someone else. And in that lonely Paris hotel room, for the first time in years, Can Yaman stopped pretending he was okay. Because he wasn't. Not even close. He didn't know how long he had sat there, hunched over, the room dark except for the dim city lights that filtered through the curtains. His tears had dried into silence, but the ache in his chest lingered like smoke after fire, invisible, but suffocating. Ken leaned back slowly, wiping his face with trembling hands. He felt raw. Empty. And yet somehow, real. For the first time in months, he wasn't running. Not from work. Not from her. Not from himself. But facing it didn't make it hurt any less. He stood and walked to the mirror. His reflection stared back, bloodshot eyes, hollow stare, jaw clenched as if bracing for another blow. He used to recognize this man. The confident actor. The charming flirt. The man who made entire nations swoon. Now, he just looked tired. A knock at the door startled him. Room service? No, he hadn't ordered anything. He didn't move. He stood still, like a statue, heart racing. After a moment, the silence returned. Whoever it was must have gone. But deep inside, he had hoped, even if for just a second, that maybe, impossibly, it was her. That she had somehow sensed his pain and come back. That she'd knock once, and he'd open the door to find Demet standing there, tears in her eyes, saying, "I couldn't walk away either." But life wasn't a film set. And this scene wasn't scripted. He returned to the bed and picked up his phone again. Her name was still saved the same, my D. He hadn't changed it. Couldn't. Every time he tried, it felt like erasing a piece of himself. His thumb hovered over the message icon. He typed, "I saw you today. You looked happy. I guess that's all that matters." He stared at the words. Then deleted them. Another attempt, "Do you ever think of us?" Deleted again. No message would fix what had been broken. No words could rewind time. He put the phone down and closed his eyes, letting memories flood his senses. He remembered Istanbul. Rain tapping gently on the window as she curled beside him, her laughter spilling like music in the room. She always made tea late at night, claiming it helped her sleep. And she'd always forget it on the counter. She had dreams bigger than any set. But she also had fears she hid too well. And he? He was too focused on the future. The next project. The next success. He had missed the small moments, the quiet signs of exhaustion in her eyes. The night she waited for him to come home. The morning she hoped he'd ask how she felt, and not just what time their call sheet started. She had given him her heart. And he had taken it for granted. He opened the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a leather-bound journal, the one he had carried through every country, every shoot, every lonely hotel stay. On the first page was a scribbled line in Turkish, "Yaralı bir kalbin sesi sessizliktir." The sound of a wounded heart is silence. He began to write. "Tonight, I cried. Not because she's gone. But because I never really fought to keep her. I thought I had time. I thought we'd always circle back. But maybe love doesn't wait for us to grow up. Maybe it walks away when we're too blind to see it standing there, arms wide open, just asking us to choose it." The ink smudged slightly from a stray tear. He paused, then continued, "I saw her today. She was laughing. And I realized. I haven't truly heard that laugh in a long time. Maybe not since the beginning. Maybe not since she trusted me with the part of her that no one else saw. And I let it slip through my hands like water." Can closed the journal. It was late now. The city had grown quiet. But inside that hotel room, the storm still raged. He stood and walked to the window again, looking down at the cobblestone street below. A couple passed by, hand in hand, heads close, sharing secrets only lovers know. He watched them until they disappeared around the corner. He whispered, as if speaking to a ghost, "Did you ever wait for me, Demet? Did I ever really come back?" No answer came. Only silence. He turned away from the window, the ache settling deeper than before. He lay down on the bed, pulling the pillow close, as if it could replace the arms he missed so much. And before sleep took him, if sleep could even come, he thought of the one thing he never told her. "If I could go back, I'd choose you. Every single time." Morning came, but the weight on his chest didn't lift with the sun. Can opened his eyes to a gray sky beyond the window. Paris had lost its color. Even the city's romantic melancholy felt hollow now. He sat up slowly, muscles aching from a sleepless night. The air in the room was thick, not just with fatigue, but with everything left unsaid. He dragged himself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face, as if it could rinse off the ache. His eyes were puffy, red, no hiding that. He didn't bother trying. What was the point? He wasn't filming today. He wasn't anyone's hero. Not right now. He looked in the mirror again. And for the first time, he didn't turn away. This broken, tired version of himself, this was real. No makeup, no scripts, no applause. Just a man who once had love, and lost it. And who finally admitted it was his fault. He remembered the last real conversation they had. It wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors. No screaming. Just distance. Quiet. That kind of silence that grows like a wall between two people who were once inseparable. She had looked at him across their shared apartment, her eyes soft, tired, and full of goodbye. Can, do you still see me? Or am I just someone in your way now? He hadn't answered. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to tell her that his own world was spinning out of control. And instead of reaching for her, he withdrew. Demet had always been the one who reached first. Who forgave first. Who stayed. But that night, she had picked up her bag, kissed him on the cheek, and whispered, "I hope one day you miss me enough to understand what you had." He never forgot that sentence. And now, sitting in a foreign hotel room with nothing but shadows for company, it echoed louder than ever. Can got dressed slowly. Black shirt, dark jeans, boots. He moved like someone who had aged 10 years overnight. Before leaving, he paused one last time and picked up the journal. He flipped to the last page he had written, the one from the night before. And beneath his confession, he added one final line, "I cried in silence because I finally saw the truth. I wasn't strong when it mattered." And she was, until she couldn't be anymore. He stepped out into the street, the cool Paris air biting against his skin. Cameras were already waiting near the hotel entrance. Fans. Reporters. Smiling faces. He put on the usual mask. The smirk. The sunglasses. The nod. But inside, he carried a secret, one only he and that hotel room would ever know. Back in Istanbul, days later. Demet sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her messages. Work offers. Scripts. Brand deals. Then she paused. There, buried in her inbox, was a message from an anonymous account. No name. No profile picture. Just one sentence, "That night, I cried alone in the hotel room, and it was you I cried for." She stared at it for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't reply. But her eyes softened. Her lips trembled. Because no matter how far they had drifted, some part of her had always wondered. Had he ever looked back? Now she knew. And while her heart had scars, that night, for the first time in a long time, she whispered to herself, "I wasn't crazy to believe in us." Meanwhile, Ken stood by the Bosphorus, back in his hometown. He had returned, not for work, not for fame, but because he had finally understood that healing doesn't happen under lights and applause. It happens in silence. In honesty. In facing what you ran from. He took a deep breath, letting the sea air fill his lungs. He didn't know what would come next. He didn't expect forgiveness. Or second chances. But he did know this, that night in the hotel room, broke him. And in that breaking, something new was born. A man who finally knew what love was. Because he had lost it. And cried for it. Alone.